Mostert is requesting a trade from the 49ers. Matt, last week, his agent, Brett Tessler, over at Tessler Sports, released the following statement. After months of unproductive talks with the 49ers about fairly adjusting Raheem Mostert's contract, which paid him for special teams, we have requested a trade. Disappointing that it would come to this for a guy who led all NFL running backs in yards per carry and helped lead them to the Super Bowl. Can I get your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't like it, and I think it's a bad move by Raheem. I think it's a bad move by his agent, and I like how he cherry picks the stats of yards per carry to kind of justify the 770 yards that he had last year. He's also acting like he gets paid pennies, which he's not. He's due $3.15 million this year, $3.5 million the next year, and he negotiated his contract going into a season where he was very clearly going to be the number 3 running back behind Tevin Coleman and behind Matt Breida. Now, it worked out in such a way that Breida got into the doghouse and Coleman was ineffective because between injuries and maybe, not being in Shanahan's system for a couple of years, maybe he was rusty. Who knows? But the fact is, Mostert did make good on his opportunities. But if she was on the other foot, and I heard you say this on the Red and Gold Standard podcast with Anthony, is that if, Mostert underperforms, can the team ask him for money back? No, that's not the way it goes. I could understand if this was the last year of his contract, but he just renegotiated that 3-year deal last year. He's got 2 to go. Now is not the time to tip over the apple cart trying to get yourself more money when you know that the team has to get George Kittle under contract, all these other people under contract. It's kind of a me first move, which kind of goes against the grain of the culture of the team. To a certain extent. And I understand that running backs have a short shelf life and you're trying to get yours. But if I'm the 49ers, I'm looking at past history and, I'm going to give you a couple names. Reuben Drones, Liddell Betts, Tatum Bell, Olandis Gary, Steve Slayton, Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, Alfred Morris. I could go on. These are all running backs that had great and productive years under either Mike Shanahan or Kyle Shanahan in this running scheme, and then went on to do nothing else for the rest of their career. History is not on Raheem Mostert's side. This is a me first move. I don't like it. And I think that it's piss poor timing for him and his agent. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, well, it's the agent's fault. Well, the trade request had to have been okayed by Raheem. So the agent's just not going to put that out there on his own. So for me, this is a little bit of selfishness, and I don't really like to see it.
Yeah, the thing that kind of irked me the most, and touching on what you ended it there with the agent's fault, I'm not going to say the entire request and this whole, movement was because of the agent, but it is technically his fault that he didn't negotiate incentives in his contract. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert when it comes to NFL contracts and agent negotiations. However, I think it's pretty standard, or at least often it happens that agents will negotiate. Hey, look at Sherman's contract. He a lot of it was incentive based, and he reached all of those incentives, and he got the most of his contract that was available. Whereas with Mostert, it was like a flat line. No matter what, this is what you're going to get.
Well, then in that case, I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. Why the hell did Raheem Mostert sign it then?
Exactly my point. Yeah.
So you can say the agent negotiated this, and that, but ultimately the player is the one who puts pen to paper.
No, and I
agreed to it.
I'm not saying Raheem is not at fault at all, but I'd say they're both equally here at fault.
I disagree with that, because the agent is the one servicing the player. You know what I mean? Like, you can't go to a restaurant or whatever and order an extra large pizza, and then when the waitress brings you the extra large pizza, then blame the waitress for you getting fat. You know what I mean? Like, and that's like an extreme example. It's a weird example, but the same holds true. The agent is servicing the player. The player holds all the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. So if the player doesn't like something, he goes back to his agent and says, that's not good enough. And if the agent can't get it done, guess what? You fire that agent, you get a new one. So I don't want to hear that the agent didn't do his job, because the agent did his job well enough that Raheem Mostert felt comfortable enough to sign the damn contract. So now you can play out the contract rather than having a decent season, 770 yards. That's a good season. I know he had 15 touchdowns between the regular season and the playoffs. That's great, but you're living off the back of that Green Bay game, and you're trying to stick it to the team when the team is in a moment of, I won't say weakness, but they traded away Breida. You don't know what you have in Tevin Coleman. Jet McKinnon's coming back. What are you going to get there? You don't know. And he's taking advantage of a moment. And usually I'm like, players, get whatever you can. But history is not on his side. Again, the players that I mentioned before all had great seasons and then all ended up, but didn't do shit after they left Shanahan's system, or the Shanahans left wherever they were playing at. So history's not on his side. And if I was the team, I'd just be like, okay, well, we'll work on trading you, but other than that, you're just going to have to sit on our roster. And even at that point, I don't even think I'd facilitate a trade. I'd be like, you got a 2-year deal. You're stuck with it. So I know that's a harsh thing to say as far as, because we always want to be pro player and stuff like that. But man, at this point in time, when you're right on the cusp of something special, when you have a special group and you're tipping the apple cart to get yourself, I want to get mine. Like, that doesn't sit right with me. And I lost a little respect for Raheem Mostert over this.
Yeah, I had a few people kind of tweet at me that they're viewing him differently. It kind of went from like a rags to riches, at least in the NFL sense of practice squad player cut by 7-8 teams, however many it was. Finally had his, got his, and he had a breakout year in his way. And he kind of became a household name, rushed into the record books in that NFC Championship game. And then now you turn around a couple of months later and you're saying, hey, I want to be rewarded specifically for that, or else I want to play with somebody else that will. And my whole point, just touching on that, the agent situation, was, if I'm a player, and granted, look, I'm obviously not an NFL player. I'm obviously not in these worlds. I'm not in these conversations, but I would think that they go to their agents and get advice from them regarding how does this contract look? What do the numbers look like? Is this what other players are getting? How does that break down? And maybe this is pure speculation here, but maybe Raheem Mostert trusted his agent was getting him the best deal and signed it anyway. Is it ignorance or the lack of research and information from Raheem's part? Sure. I'm not saying that he's not.
You have to be, listen, it's like what I tell people, because I work in the healthcare industry, and it's what I tell everybody in the healthcare industry. As a patient, you need to be your own advocate. As a player, you need to be your own advocate. If you're not sure what a contract says, or if you think it's a good one, listen, if you're looking out for you like you should be, just like you can with doctors, go and get a second opinion from a different agent. Hey, what do you think about this? One of the guys on the team, say, hey, can you get your agent to look over this, like on the hush, so we can just, whatever, and get it done that way. There are ways that you can do it so that, it comes out and it comes up the way that you want it, with you being educated on the situation, you getting exactly what you asked for and what you feel comfortable with. And just because you outperform something doesn't mean that you necessarily get to, tear up that contract and do something else. Next year, maybe it's a case. But here's the other thing that nobody's talking about. He said he wants to be in line with the other running backs on the team. Well, now you're going to put a wedge between yourself and who you're obviously talking about, which is Tevin Coleman, because Jet McKinnon restructured his deal. So I think he's on the vet minimum with some escalators in there, depending on performance. So you're talking about Tevin Coleman, who's, I think, getting 4.15 this year, 4.25, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a difference of $1 million. And you're talking about on your own team, you're talking about another person's money. And to me, again, this is just one of those things where, hey, man, get all you can, but there are ways to go about it. And he's going about it in a selfish way that I think is going to negatively impact that running backs room and ultimately negatively affect the team.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. There's that saying, don't count other people's money. Not only is he counting somebody else's money, he's counting his teammate, his family, his brother, in a sense, and it's not a good look. Now, let me ask you this before we kind of wrap this topic up, Matt. If he were to have this request after next season where he has 850 yards, another 10 touchdowns on the ground, essentially improves upon this year, would you have a problem with it then?
No, because then you're going into the last year of your deal. It's a contract year, and you're going to be talking extension anyway. So then it's an appropriate time to do it. It's just, you have 2 years left on your deal. You signed something as a special teams player when, by all accounts, going into the season, you were a special teams player, and it just so happened that circumstance worked out in your favor that you got a chance to do something. And now, just because of that, listen, just because you do it once doesn't mean that you're going to be able to do it again. Again, like I said, Reuben Drones, Liddell Betts, Alandis Gary, all these guys that were one-hit wonders that never did anything. Steve Slayton had a 1,000-yard year in Houston in 2008, the same year that I believe Matt Schaub went to the Pro Bowl. What are the common thread? Well, Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator. I mean, he makes chicken salad out of chicken shit, and you got to prove that you're not chicken shit. You need to do it more than once. That's the bottom line for me. If he can do it again this year, then we can talk. But even with that being said, there's also a better way he can go about it. And I expect somebody on the team, I won't name names, but we all know who the leaders on the team are, to pull him aside and say, listen, dude, like there's ways to do this thing. And the way that you did it, that's not it.
Hey, George Kittle. Matt, can I get your initial thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, they're going to have to pay him eventually. And I think that you're seeing a groundswell, not just from fans, but from teammates as well. I know Trent Taylor's talked about it, to where they, it's time to pay George Kittle. And, this goes into a situation where if you don't get it done, what is that going to do to team morale? Is it going to affect everybody? It's about the time where it's like he's already proven that he's the best tight end in the league. Sorry, Kansas City fans, Kelsey can't block, so deal with it. But yeah, he's in the last year of his rookie deal. He's been criminally underpaid as far as fifth rounder goes. He's well outperformed the contract, and unlike what we talked about with Raheem Mostert, he has waited until the proper time to renegotiate his deal. So he wants the extension. He wants to remain in San Francisco. Everybody wants him to remain here. And dumb rumors notwithstanding, I don't think George Kittle's going anywhere anytime soon. So as long as the team can get him signed and in a quick fashion, you don't have to worry about that hit morale that comes with, man, this guy's earned his money, but the team is just like not paying him the way that they should. So you don't want to let these things linger too long because they can become sort of a distraction. And coming off a Super Bowl loss, you definitely want it the upcoming season to be about, hey, we need to go out there and get back to the Super Bowl. And with, COVID and all this other stuff that's already going to be a distraction, you don't need any more by, essentially disrespecting one of your best players and not getting him under contract and giving him the contract that he deserves. I guess the real question is that, and that we don't know, is that where are they in terms of dollars and cents? How far apart are they? I know that Kittle's agent has talked about wanting to get him wide receiver money, which I personally think is a little ludicrous. But I mean, again, we talked about this before. A good agent will get you, what they say they'll get you, and it's up to the player to, decide whether or not that's good enough for them. So, barring anything unforeseen, I do expect a deal to get done. It's just, the timetable. So you need to get the distractions out the window, get them signed, get them on the roster. It's the right thing to do, and let's go out there and win some damn football games.
Yeah, and I just want to real quick credit Brad Graham over at the SF Niners. He's the one who kind of started this hashtag and kind of made it start trending. Guys like Trent Taylor, George Kittle's trainer, and people that former wide receiver Quentin Patton, 49ers wide receiver. These are all guys that are kind of echoing the same sentiment. And I do agree with you. I actually spoke on this on the last Red and Gold Standard podcast with Anthony, that this is the Cinderella story of what teams want to happen with their draft picks, especially a guy who was drafted in the 5th round. They kind of cultivated him, grew him, and then he blossomed into the superstar tight end that he is, the best tight end in the NFL. So if you're not going to reward that, guys that are getting drafted this year, next year, last year, they're going to be thinking, what's going to happen to me? I'm not George Kittle. And even, if he can't get a contract extension, what am I going to get? So yeah. I do agree with you. It kind of does start making guys question things. And, as far as morale, it's kind of like we're working our butts off here as hard as we can, training every day. And for what? If we're not going to get ours, what's the point of making sure the team gets theirs, So yeah. I do see what you mean. It is tough. But, and as far as other tight ends, do you think that affects George Kittle's mindset too, where he's kind of thinking of guys like Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, that's something from Cleveland. And then he's looking at these guys in their contracts and he's like, these guys are getting crazy money. And if you're telling me I can't get more than them, do you think it kind of creates a conflict of interest?
Well, he's going to get more than them. Austin Hooper is now the highest paid tight end in the league, but he only makes a little over 10. Everything that we've heard is that Kittle's agent is asking for Julio Jones money, which is 22. So if you're talking about the difference between, if you want to make them say the highest paid at 11, tight end money and 22, that's a huge gap. I mean, that you're doubling the price essentially. They have to meet somewhere in the middle. I know Kittle has been the go-to target. I know that he was targeted a bunch last year on third and fourth downs. I know that his first down percentage in those plays was well over 50%. He's a valuable cog. He's had 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, despite what some people may say. He's going to continue to have 1,000-yard seasons because if he can do it when he's playing with trash, now that the team has some value and some good pieces around him, and they're going to have Jimmy G another year, you got Brandon Ayuk on the outside, Deebo Samuel, maybe Trent Taylor coming back, maybe Jalen Hurd coming back, all these pieces. Now, all of a sudden, there's a lot of targets to go around, and you think that would lead him to not getting as much. But the alternative to that is teams can't focus on Kittle as much. They have to pay attention to the other weapons, which means Kittle's going to be one-on-one more. And with his talent, he's going to get open more, which means he's going to get the ball more. Because let's face it, Jimmy G loves him some George Kittle, and that's the way that it is. It comes down to the amount that you're willing to pay him as a tight end. You can't just say, I'm going to give him Julio money. That's patently ridiculous. That's resetting the market in a way that no team is going to want to sit there and do. There has to be some room for compromise, whether that's more guarantees coming from the 49ers. Maybe Parag kind of lays off of some of his team-friendly magic and says, hey, you know what? We might only be able to get you $14 million a year, but at least we'll give you a mostly or fully guaranteed contract. We'll keep it short enough so that when you hit your age 30 season or your age 31 season, you have opportunity to get another contract in you, something to that effect. But asking for 22 is, to me, I'm not a GM, but to me, that's a non-starter. You can't pay him like the highest paid receiver in the league. That's just a no-go. So there has to be compromise on both sides, but it does need to get done because, it does look a little suspect if you're going to let the heart and soul of your offense and really your team, linger out there without getting a deal that's fair to him and fair to the team done.
Yeah, $22 million, man. Getting him that Julio money, it's just like you said, it's a non-starter. And if his agent were to go into the 49ers organization saying that, respectfully, they'd probably laugh and say, okay, take care. Like that. There's no way if they're not willing to negotiate down. I think we talked about this last time we talked about his contract and him wanting to get paid wide receiver money. I think you said something like 14 to 15 million tops.
Yeah.
And that's reasonable for George Kittle. He's miles better than the next tight end who's, the highest paid tight end, Austin Hooper.
Right. Well, and at 15 million, let's put it into perspective. You're getting 150% of what Austin Hooper is making, which means you're essentially, you're 50% over what the next highest paid guy is. So that's resetting the market in a huge way in and of itself. When you're talking about, I want double what, more than double of what the next best guy gets or whatever, that's just, there's no way. There's no way. Not even Mahomes got double what the next best guy got, and it's just, if anybody deserved it to be Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes kind of actually in this situation, I think kind of hurt Kittle because Mahomes took such little guarantee. Like $64 million is the full guarantee, is fully guaranteed. The 140 is only guaranteed for injury, and then the rest of it's like year to year, and they can kick the can, they can restructure, they can do whatever. So, it's not looking good for George in that regard. So, again, it's like, his agent asking for 22, the team's like, yeah, well, okay, see you later. Call us with a real offer. It's one of those situations. So. But it doesn't look good for the team because obviously everybody on media and, in the media and everything, especially teammates, they're going to be pro player. So they just have to get something done or at least, put out some information that, hey, things are getting close or whatever, it just to appease the masses.
Right. And I think especially in light of the Raheem Mostert situation that we just talked about, those contract negotiations going south and him now demanding a trade, people were speculating that perhaps George Kittle's going to hold out. And he confirmed to Matt Mayoko of NBC Sports Bay Area that was not going to happen. He gave the following quote: "Being a captain, I want to be there for my team, and I need to show the right leadership skills." So, Matt, how do you compare and contrast this against Raheem Mostert's situation, like I just said?
Well, you see which one's a leader and which one's not. So Kittle is a leader. He's going to come out. He's going to handle his business because at the end of the day, his job is to play football. His job is to be there for his team. And he knows that he is talented enough and that he's going to get paid regardless. He's going to get some type of money regardless. So it's just a matter of, what the actual numbers are. He's not worried about being a one-hit wonder like Raheem Mostert is. And let's face it, the running back position is so devalued. that they can kick Mostert out and Devontae Freeman's sitting right there in free agency that they can pick up. But that would give you a very similar production. There are a lot of running backs out there you get very similar production out of. There's not a lot of players to replace George Kittle. That's just not how that works. He's too talented. But you see who the leaders on this team are and who are the guys that are just kind of in it for them. And I hate to say that about Raheem, but again, the way that he went about it was wrong. I think the way that George is going about it, hey, I'm not going to request a trade. I'm not going to hold out. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do the stuff that I need to do. You see on social media, he's working his ass off in the offseason to get ready. Everything notwithstanding with the world, and who knows if there's going to be a season. Hopefully there is, but he's still out there. He's doing exactly what he does to become the best player possible, and that's why he's going to get paid. It's not, hey, I did a little good this time. It's day in, day out, first guy there, last guy to leave, hustle, hustle, hustle. I'm a leader. I'm going to do what I need to do. Now I get paid. Simple as that.
Yeah, I do agree. That's kind of the difference between these two situations. One guy is putting himself before the team, and the other is putting the team before himself. And I do agree. Again, he's probably thinking it from the sense of it's going to happen regardless. So why should I kind of make a big fuss out of it, burn bridges with the organization in a way, maybe not fully, but you're showing your true colors when the first time when things don't go your way, you say, okay, then trade me, or okay, then I don't want to work with you anymore. That's not a good way to approach this. No, and I think George Kittle knows a lot of eyes are on his situation, mainly due to the fact that he's a superstar. He's a household name. He's the best at his position. So the whole media and fans are going to be honed in on his contract situation. So even that would probably be another reason in George Kittle's mind that, hey, this team's not going to do me wrong. There's so much focus. There's so much attention on my specific situation that they're going to try and make sure they reward me appropriately. Right. So I agree with you in the sense that he shouldn't have gone about it. Raheem shouldn't have gone about it that way. I would have much rather have seen him go about it George Kittle's way and, say, look, that's not what I want, but we're going to go ahead and still continue to work at this together, as opposed to cutting off ties and say, okay, then you got to find someone else to pay me. Grant Cohn of Sports Illustrated broke the news that the 49ers are possibly engaging in trade negotiations for Jet safety Jamal Adams. Do you think there's any truth to this rumor?
I think that this rumor is like the atmosphere at the top of Mount Everest. It's a bunch of thin air. No, I don't believe it. It's like, okay, how did you come by this? What's your source? Where do you get this from? Why do you, it's just, no, I don't believe it. No, you tell me what you think, because this is just ridiculous to me.
Okay, so to answer your question, per Grant Cohn's article, he said he got a direct message from a well-placed source saying Jamal Adams to the 49ers is, quote, picking up steam. And that was back on June 24th. And then recently on July 9th, he followed that up with saying that, it is picking up steam and citing multiple sources, including Sports Illustrated Corbin Smith. Seattle and San Francisco had both had preliminary discussions regarding New York Jets with the New York Jets regarding the availability of disgruntled star safety Jamal Adams. So I can see where the conversations are being had, but it's like
but there's a difference. Yeah. There's a difference between preliminary conversation when Jamal Adams is clearly disgruntled and he's like, hey, trade me. Of course, why wouldn't you pick up the phone and be like, hey, like what's going, call the Jets and be like, hey, what's going on here? Is there any way he's available? But that's different than saying, oh, it's picking up steam. And I know that Colin Cowherd had actually reported on it too on his show that it was picking up steam. And now you have this like rumor with a well-placed source or multiple sources, which means absolutely nothing really. I mean, it's just everybody has their sources. Florio says a bunch of stuff that's not true and he has sources. We know people who just make things up out of thin air and then go, sources tell me, and it's absolutely nothing. It's one of those things of like, what's the compensation? What are the Niners going to give up? Why are you going to take a guy on what I think it's the last year of his rookie deal? I think it's his fifth year exercise this year. And at a position that, again, has been devalued, safety, not as badly as running backs, but it's not like he's a top flight corner. You're going to have to pay him. We just watched the Rams do this with Jalen Ramsey. Like, why are people insistent on these big splashy names that, yeah, it sounds cool in the short term, but in the long term, it's not feasible to build a championship contender around all these splashy names. Of course, if I can get Odell Beckham Jr. and Jamal Adams and this guy and that guy and that guy and that guy, of course you get those guys in a salary cap free league. Sure, why not? Madden, sure, why not? But this is the real world, and that's not going to happen. And I'd rather have the ability to keep 5 to 7 B players than to sign 3 superstar players, because guess what? There's 53 guys on a roster. It's not just one guy. One guy has never won anything just by himself. And there's a reason why Odell Beckham hasn't won a Super Bowl and why Jamal Adams hasn't won a Super Bowl. And these guys, quarterback's the most important position. Beyond that, you have to fill your team with a bunch of good dudes, because you need players at every position, not just Jamal Adams. We have to pay Kittle. Fred Warner's going to be coming up. I'm not going to sacrifice re-signing Fred Warner so that I can trade for Jamal Adams. He's a great player, don't get me wrong. The 49ers should have drafted him when he came out. I mean, there's no question about it. They should have drafted Jamal Adams when he came out. I think he came out the same year Solomon Thomas did, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they had an opportunity at him and they didn't do it. So for me, this is just, like every other rumor. It's slow season. People hear one thing, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Maybe somebody thought they heard something, so you just throw it out there to see what sticks. And to me, the move doesn't make any sense. The move, from a financial perspective, from a team building perspective, all it does is put a splashy name on the field for you if you get it done. But beyond that, it hurts you. Just look at the Rams.
Yeah, I think the main point is financially. They just traded away DeForest Buckner because they weren't going to be able to afford him, only to turn around and possibly be interested in acquiring Jamal Adams, who's going to cost, a large amount of money. So it's like, why would they do that? Wouldn't they just keep DeForest Buckner? And that's the case. But I mean, I understand the 2 different positions, but it's like financially, you're still, trading somebody because you can't pay them and then trading for somebody to pay them. It doesn't make sense to me. As much as I would love to see Jamal Adams on the 49ers, I just don't think it's realistic to expect that to actually happen. And I think going back to our initial point, preliminary discussions is such a vague term. If you hear somebody's available, you could call and say, hey, how much are you asking for this guy? Oh, okay, thanks. That's preliminary discussions. That's exactly. The 49ers have reached out. And maybe they called again. Hey, would you be willing to take, a 6th-round pick? No? Oh, okay. Hang up. That's picking up steam. Not saying that, more has happened, because obviously I don't know. I don't have any sources in this situation. But these terms are so vague that that's possibly what could have happened. And then they're being leaked out. Maybe Seattle seriously is interested in acquiring him, and the 49ers are being used as a pawn to kind of drive up the price, or vice versa. So you never really know.
Yeah, and you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of a couple years ago, and I have no idea where this guy went. But Bleacher Report used to have a guy named Jason Cole, and he had the buzz with Jason Cole or whatever. I think that was his name, Jason Cole.
Yeah, Jason Cole.
And he was always talking about rumors with the Niners. This guy's doing this guy's doing that, this guy's doing that. And none of them ever came true. This is another one of those things. If you hear something, sure, why not throw it out there? And I'm not saying that Grant Cohn just makes stuff up. It could be that he legitimately did hear something, and now working for SI, there's pressure to have, better stories and get stuff out there. And maybe he could have jumped the gun on it. I'm not trying to call into question Grant's integrity or whatever. I disagree with him on a lot of the things that he says. But I don't think that he's dishonest, but to me, there's not a lot here. And to put it out there from, this is no longer the Press Democrat. This is Sports Illustrated, and that name carries weight. So for me, I think it's a little premature to put that stuff out there, and it's gaining traction in a way that I don't think it would if he wasn't at Sports Illustrated. So, while the fan base may want this to happen, picking up steam, preliminary discussions, this and this and that, it doesn't mean anything. And until something actually happens or tangibly happens, or we're hearing people, report on it like Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport, who have their well-established reputation, where if they put out conjecture, or a Jay Glazer, where if they put out conjecture on something, it has a little more weight. To me, until that happens and one of those guys speaks out, this is just smoke in a slow off season.
Okay, so taking the opportunity that it is a slow off season, let's play hypothetical here. Hypothetically, sure. If they do make this trade, what are they giving up to get Jamal Adams?
Probably entirely too much. I mean seriously. I've heard names like Mike McClinchy bandied about. I've heard first round pick bandied about, player plus whatever. And then people always do just trade Jaquaski Tart. Just play position for position. Position for position swaps never happen. I mean, never happen. I can't even remember the last time that occurred. And somebody can look it up. Go ahead, post in the comments. I'll take a look at it. If you can find it, fantastic. Maybe we'll even, send you some 49ers masks or something. Call me out. Let's see if it's ever happened before. But to me, it's just, it's too much for that player. And again, it's not about the compensation. It's about the long-term view. And so let's say you give up a first round pick and a player, whoever that player may be, maybe to, I don't know, clear some cap space. You give up Quan Alexander and a first round pick. First of all, that's entirely too much. I'm just, throwing whatever. But you're still going to have to pay Jamal Adams. And then all that cap relief you got by trading, Quan is gone. And now you don't have the opportunity to bring in a star player on a rookie deal, a slotted rookie deal to, take over for that. Then you have to figure out, hey, what am I doing with Jaquaski Tart and, Ward? What are we going to do with those guys? Do you really need the help with the safety right now? I don't think so. I think Marcel Harris is a good player. I think Dante Exum is a little raw, but he could be a good player. You have guys on the back end that can really, do some stuff. You still have Tarvarius Moore, who you can try, work on. He's raw, but you have guys. It's just it's too much either way. That's all I'm going to say. People can throw out the trade Dante Pettis. Dante Pettis has no trade value. Trade, Solomon Thomas. Solomon Thomas has no trade value. You're not getting rid of those guys. It's not going to happen. So if you're going to trade for a guy like Jamal Adams, who again is elite at his position, he might be the best, in the box safety in the NFL. Could be, but for what you have to give to get him, it's too much, especially for a team that's already is contending for Super Bowls without him.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the main point of all of this as to why they shouldn't. Look at how far they've gotten without him. I mean, they were so close to winning a Super Bowl, and the roster essentially performed perfectly. I mean, the passing defense was playing at a historic level. The rushing defense, nobody could stop them. And the offense, rushing all over people. It's kind of like there are very few holes on this team that people feel like they need to go and acquire such a massive piece in Jamal Adams. It's just that the space isn't there for him financially and on the team. And I totally agree with you in the sense that they're better off trying to draft a guy who is on a controlled salary and they can kind of cultivate and grow him and, hone his crafts into exactly what they want instead of getting somebody who's already, established and made and his talent's already there. Sure. But you're getting what you get as far as you can kind of build the player on your own and train them through coaching to be exactly what you want to be. And I agree, it's going to cost way too much. You're probably looking at, a couple of key players and at least a second round pick for Jamal Adams. And I just think that it's not worth it, unfortunately. As much as I'd like to see Jamal Adams play for the 49ers, they had their chance. After that, close the book. End of story. They're not going to have him. Move on. It's not worth it, and it's not even worth speculating about, to be honest. And also, touching on Marcel Harris, friend of the show, Eric Crocker, over at 4th and 9, just did a really, really good breakdown on 4th and 9, their Twitter account, on Marcel Harris and how he feels he can perform as a safety. So make sure you guys go and check that out.
I don't know if he's the most valuable player returning from injury, but he's definitely the one that intrigues me the most, and I think that's Jalen Hurd. We just got the smallest glimpse in the preseason against Dallas, but man, did he make an impact. He looked like a big, fast, fight for the extra yard type of dude. Super exciting, a big receiver, which we haven't really seen in this offense. Somebody that could give, defenses fits in the red zone. If he can come back from that back injury, man, it completely changed the outlook of the receivers. To me, that's the guy, followed closely by Trent Taylor, who obviously is a favorite of Jimmy G and really is kind of a darling for the fan base. He was out there doing some routes the other day that I first saw him making some cuts. He looked really good. It's exciting to see him get out there. But yeah, for me, I mean, 3rd round guy, Jalen Hurd, big guy, young guy, strong guy, not afraid of contact. Man, if he can get out there, sky's the limit. What about you, Zach?
Jalen Hurd's kind of the go-to answer for this question. And, like you said, he's got a lot of fans excited about him on social media. But for me, it's kind of a less sexy answer, but I'm going to go with DJ Jones.
Okay.
The guy was playing really, really well before his injury last season, and he was establishing himself as a starter on this team. He's a big run stopper who was able to just kind of eat the gaps up and not have to worry about being double teamed. He would take it on no problem. And there was a noticeable difference in the 49ers run defense when DJ Jones got injured. So I think him coming back, although the 49ers drafted Javon Kinlaw and he'll likely be competing with him for time, I think that him even being a rotational player, maybe he'll start the season, maybe Kinlaw will start the season, but even him just coming off the bench on, certain downs, I think that's going to be very, very impactful for the 49ers to have him as that type of player. What do you think about DJ Jones? Do you think that his role is going to kind of be downsized this season?
I don't think it'll be downsized because essentially Kinlaw is going to be a rookie replacement for DeForest Buckner, who left in that trade to the Colts. That essentially netted us Kinlaw. But I think Kinlaw actually to start out is going to be, a little bit more of a rotation guy himself. You don't want to give too much to a rookie right off the bat, which could increase the playing time for DJ Jones and in turn also returning from injury Ronald Blair, who could get in there for some rotation work too. DJ Jones, I really like the kid. Every time I see him, he's such an entertaining and jovial personality. He's a fun-loving guy. He's kind of when you have so many intense guys, it's always good to have a guy there that can break up the mood, but he also does his job. He's a load inside, and he can bring down runners, and he can get good push on that offensive line and disrupt the backfield. So it'll be nice to have him back. I definitely agree that, he's going to be an impact player. But, as far as his role, I think it actually is going to be a little bit more just because Kinlaw is a rookie. He's not going to be that, I think Buckner played something like 95% of the defensive snaps. Buckner almost took no plays off. So for me, at least year one, I think DJ Jones is going to have a bigger role because Kinlaw is such a raw prospect and, a rookie, and you don't want to overwhelm the rookie. DJ Jones been here for a couple of years. He knows what's going on. And, sometimes it's better to go with veteran presence. But in any event, he's going to help Kinlaw along for sure.
Okay. So that's nice to know. That's nice to think that, he's going to benefit and he'll be beneficial to a rookie, kind of grow his talents. Now, Matt, being our medical expert on the team here, he did miss the rest of the season, I believe, with a significant ankle injury. I know you probably don't know the specifics about that, but given his position, is that something to worry about long term?
I think you go back to Ian Williams, who had a significant ankle injury, and that's worst case scenario where it kind of ended his career. For DJ Jones, again, you have to go in assuming that once you have these injuries and once you get these things taken care of, that you're going to be able to return at close to 100%. Injuries are what they are, and I don't think there's any way that even if you have something surgically repaired, that's going to be as good or better than what it was naturally. So you're hoping to mitigate as much of that fall off as possible. For DJ Jones and the ankle, you just hope that everything healed well. It comes back. It's nice and strong. He doesn't have any problems with it. If he doesn't have a history of those type of things, then you're not really worried about it. As long as the healing took place properly, he had a good rehab regimen going on, and he took care of the things that he needed to take care of to rebuild strength, to maintain mobility, and to make sure that he protected the injury, then he should be fine.
Okay, so that's promising. Now, touching on your pick, Jalen Hurd, big target, showed what he can do in that one game, preseason game against the Cowboys, got a lot of fans excited, and then unfortunately he had that back injury. That injury is a lot more serious than an ankle injury like DJ Jones suffered from. Is there any concern there moving forward?
There's always concern with the back. When you have an injury like that, and again, it's still kind of unspecified what exactly was done with it as far as treatment and all this stuff. It's still a little bit nebulous. We just kind of got that, he's progressing. He's progressing. We don't know what that means. A back like that, it could be a situation where, his career isn't as productive because he needs to take, more time to rest and recuperate in between games, or, he could have setbacks. A back is a very sticky thing. As someone who's gone through a ruptured disc surgery myself, I can tell you that, it's sometimes it's a hard recovery, and you have leftover things that you didn't have before, and you kind of have to just get with it. A lot of times it's in your headspace, and stuff does feel a little weird, and it's all a matter of how he feels, how long he can feel good about what he's doing. And we need to see him out there. Really, it's going to be telling when he takes contact. I mean, that's going to be, because you can get out there, you can run routes, you can lift weights, you can do all this stuff until your body gets moved in a direction that's not exactly natural. Like, maybe he plants and takes a hit to the upper body while his lower body's going the opposite direction, and he needs to get a little twist on that back and see how it holds up. Then we can kind of evaluate where he's going to go from there. But a back injury is, especially this early, it's something that I said with DK Metcalf, who I think is a tremendous talent, but he's also had a neck fusion by the time he was 20 years old. So there's those things where one of the things that you can't ever truly fix is your spine, and you have to protect that no matter what. So it is going to be a concern probably for the rest of his career. We're always going to have to, keep that at the back of our mind. Hey, he's had back issues. JJ Watt, another example of a guy who had a back surgery, came back. It didn't quite go right. He had to have another one. And, the second time was the charm for him. So again, it's just the back is the back. It's very complicated. It's hard to fix once it's injured, and you just have to kind of keep an eye on it.
Yeah, it's just one of those horrible injuries that most people never really recover from fully. They continue to live with the pain, at least in some effect, some level of pain for the rest of their lives. So I do hope that Jalen Hurd, is able to recover and play. I just want to say, it wasn't just fans that were excited about Jalen Hurd's potential. Peter King of Sports Illustrated went out and traveled with the team last season, and in the preseason, he talked about it, and he had a quote here saying that essentially he just saw. Here's the quote right here. That he was out there with the team, and quote, I walked out of camp, we got into the cars, we were going to the next place, and the two women I was traveling with asked what my impression was of Jalen Hurd. I said, we just saw the 2019 NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. Hurd's going to come out of nowhere. He's going to be fantastic. So a guy like Peter King, who's been around for years, decades really, he knows his players. He knows what he sees. I think we should be able to trust his eyes. So there's a lot of reason for the 49ers, for their fans, to be excited about Jalen Hurd and his potential and his effect in this offense. And John Lynch even spoke about it back in April of this year. And when asked about his health, he said, we're very optimistic. I don't want to be overly optimistic because last year we saw some progress and then we had some setbacks. I'll let that thing continue to take its place. Matt, we did also hear prior to the Super Bowl that we didn't hear until months later by Matt Mayoko, I believe, broke that Jalen Hurd didn't even travel with the team because of fear that his back might not be able to handle the plane flight. There's just so much conflicting information, but not necessarily conflicting, but it's like John Lynch said, it's promising, and then you have a setback. It's promising, and you have another setback. So, man, I just really hope for the sake of the 49ers and for the sake of Jalen Hurd, he works out because I think he could be a real threat in this league.
Absolutely. You do hope it works out. And like you said, it's just you have good days, you're going to have bad days. And, it's a lot of conflicting information. Some people saying, oh, his career could be over. John Lynch saying, hey, we're playing it one day at a time. He's progressing well. Who knows? I guess we'll find out soon.
Yes, we will. Guys, we're going to leave it on that. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. Our handles are below on the screen. And make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Do you think DJ Jones or Jalen Hurd will be more valuable to the 49ers returning from injury? Do you think any of them will suffer long-term effects from their injuries? Make sure you let us know below, and we'll pick a comment below that we agree with for the next video.
And go ahead and hit the bell for all your notifications. We're bringing you 49ers news every day of the week.
Thanks, guys.
Go Niners.